Hi, I'm Brenda Ballantyne with The Heartmender Show. In times past, I was a host on a show titled On Call, taking the mystery out of psychology. From time to time, we like to take a sneak peek to see if this information is still relevant today. Although they are a bit grainy, I think you'll enjoy the content. I'll be back in just a few minutes. So grab yourself a cup of coffee and be able to relax and enjoy the show. Welcome to On Call. With me in the studio is Wayne Larkins. Wayne, I'm so glad that you're able to join us today. You have such an incredible story that you're going to share, a life-changing story. But what I'd like to do is start, first of all, saying thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
You know, Wayne, I want to start out with the fact of going back in time somewhat so people can understand where you came from. When you were a young boy, I know that you had shared with me earlier in the studio and in another show that you were kind of in a good neighborhood and a neighbor took you to church and you were just actually having a good time growing up.
Yeah.
Just like everybody else in the neighborhood. But something happened to you. And what I'd like to start out with is when you talked to me about going to a drive-in theater. Now, a lot of people don't even know what a drive-in theater is because they don't have them anymore.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I was probably about 10 years old, and it was called Reading Drive-In. It was right downtown off of Market Street. And we used to, when we went to the theater back then, Mom and Dad used to throw out a blanket, and the boys all climbed out on a blanket and watched the show from out there. And this show was Hell's Angels on Wheels. And during the intermission, I remember telling my two younger brothers, one of these days I'm going to be one of them guys. I didn't mean one of them Hell's Angels, but one of them guys riding that motorcycle.
So you liked riding motorcycles?
Yeah.
Now, not everybody who rides motorcycles ends up being a Hell's Angel.
No.
But there's something that happened to you, and you, when you think back to it, that was kind of a turning point in your life. A movie.
Yeah.
Do you think that movies have influences on kids?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I think almost 100% of everything showed on TV now is influencing our young.
So the influence it had on you, you said you wanted to ride a motorcycle, but at the same time, you did start getting involved with bad boys and motorcycles. What happened?
Well, I didn't want to just ride a motorcycle. I wanted to be an outlaw biker. I wanted to everything that came along with everything that was on that show that I was seeing. That being able to ride anywhere you want, do anything you want, treat people in the way you wanted, and have anything you wanted, and not have to work for it, or just take it when you wanted it.
You know, one of the things that we would describe as, in the psychological realm, would be an oppositional defiant disorder, in a sense. And I say disorder because you were not in order, you were getting out of order, outlaw, being an outlaw, riding motorcycle with outlaws. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In that, you were working with other people that were feeling the same way you were, that they just wanted to take what they wanted, and how does that work?
Well, I guess at that age, it was just like a fantasy or something. But later on, as I got older and started riding street bikes, I rode dirt bikes and stuff like that all my life. But when I started riding street bikes and hanging out with bikers and different clubs and going to different functions, it becomes a way of life with you.
When you mention clubs or different functions, when I think of a club, there could be Kiwanis, there could be all different types of clubs, golf clubs.
We call them clubs, but bottom line, it's just another gang. It's just another bunch of people that is organized in their own little clique, doing their own little thing, and it doesn't matter about the rest of the world.
In that gang that you mentioned, how old were you when you first started?
the first club that I was ever belonged to, I was 18.
And you were looking for, what were you looking for?
That way of life.
To be able to do what you want?
Yeah.
So that you wouldn't have to take care of yourself?
No responsibility.
No responsibility? You could just take what you want?
To no one except your own people.
You have to be responsible to them?
Ever seen Star Trek?
Star Trek?
Yeah. The Klingons in Star Trek, the way they got up in rank is they got around to where they could kill the higher officer, and then they took his place. And it was kind of that way. I mean, you just, however you could get there, that's how you got there.
So the worse you behaved, the better you became. Yeah. Which is kind of twisted in a way. The worse you behaved, the better you became in their sight.
Yeah.
And so you had no problem with destroying property, being aggressive towards people?
Not then.
You had mentioned earlier that you started very young, at a young age, wanting to be involved. You got involved with drugs?
Oh, yeah.
How old were you then?
I think I sniffed glue when I was 10 years old.
So kids these days can pick up glue and get all different types of inhalants. And when they take drugs, a lot of times I don't think we realize how it has an effect on your brain. Not only does it get you high in the sense of you're not thinking straight, or maybe you're doing something that maybe you wouldn't do normally, but it alters the physical part of your brain. And if you do that over and over and over, then it destroys parts of your brain. And if you're in a place of feeling aggressive anyway, or I just want what I want and I don't really care about anybody else, then add to that hallucinogens, and then the paranoia comes along because you don't want to get busted.
We never cared about getting busted.
You didn't care about getting busted?
No.
And why do you think that is?
It was just the way it was.
Well, part of that, to you, it was just the way it was, but if looking at it from a psychological point of view, it would be like it's an oppositional, just defiant. I'll show you, I can break the law and I don't care, what can you do to me?
Well,
so what happens
we
with
called the people that weren't in what we were in, the rest of the world was citizens, and that was something we didn't want to be, because we were outlaws. Right.
You're prideful of the fact that you were outside of the law.
Yeah.
And because you were outside of the law, you could take what you wanted, property, destroy, kill, steal, whatever it is, whatever you desired, whatever came up to your mind. So you started living, actually, the fantasy that you had when you saw this movie.
Probably, yeah.
What happened to you by doing that?
What do you mean?
Did you get in trouble?
Yeah, I did 3 terms in prison. My first term, I got 2 6-year terms, and they ran them back to back. That means that I went to prison, I did 6 years, went to the front desk, paroled, turned right around, went back to my cell, and did the other 6 years.
Where were you located?
I went to Vacaville the first time.
So did you do the 12 years in Vacaville?
Well, I started out in Vacaville. And they transfer you around all the time.
A lot of people think, well, prison wouldn't be too bad. It's 3 meals in a cot, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what it's like a little bit.
Well, the first 2 weeks I was in Vacaville, they finally put me in a cell. The first 2 weeks, I was sleeping out in the hallway, and they had a bunch of bunk beds out there. And they finally put me in a cell, and they put me in a cell with this guy who was doing life, and he was about, 5'2", probably 120 pounds. Seemed like a pretty nice guy. Asked him why he was locked up in that little bitty cell for so long, and he said that he had a cellie that snored all the time, and he tried to get him to take care of it and stuff, and the guy just told him, that's just the way I am, live with it. So he cut his throat one night, and he missed so many counts that they finally come in the cell and checked on the guy, and the only thing that was left of him was his head underneath the blanket because the guy had deboned him and flushed him down the toilet.
Oh my gosh. And this is your cellmate. This is who you're now locked in with.
That was my first time, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did you think about not snoring?
I sit up in the corner all the time I was in there. Luckily, I was only in there like for a week with that guy. But yeah, anybody that says they went to prison, they wasn't scared, that's a lie. Everybody that goes to prison for the first time is scared to death.
Now here you're in the cell. How big a cell is this?
Well, I could touch both sides of it with my hands.
Wow, and you're not that big of a guy.
No, and they had 2 bunks, but they were just little cement slabs, and you couldn't walk between them.
You couldn't?
You could put your foot between them, but you couldn't walk between them.
Oh. Wow. You know, you think bunks, you think of one on top of each other.
Yeah.
No.
And these were side by side, but they were only like 2 foot wide.
How did that affect you to think about this guy, chopping this guy up in pieces and put him in the toilet? I mean, that's
It
horrible.
scared me to death.
And yet the guy that was in there didn't think it was too weird?
He just seemed like, I told the dude not to snort.
And for the audience's sake, to let them know that someone who has absolutely no regard for life or anything that bothers somebody else is just all about themselves.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you were bugging me, you were snoring. You know, that is a ultimate sociopath.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that we have prisons for people like that who...
Some people need to be locked up.
Some do. Now, did you need to be locked up?
Yeah,
You did.
sure.
And yet here it is, a miracle, the fact that you're out and you have a story to tell. There was another story that I wanted to touch on that you had mentioned earlier about when you were in Vacaville, that you got to go to the movies. Now, for me to think about, you get to get out and go to the movies, what was that like?
Well, they have a process through receiving, you're in receiving, and then you go through so long, then they classify you and put you what they call the main line. And when you're on the main line, you can go out on the yard, you can go out, lift weights, go to canteen, do all kinds of things like that. And once a month, they have a movie in the gymnasium, and you can, when they call it out, you can line up and go in. And when you go in, there's like bleachers set up. They'd hold, I think you'd probably hold 150 people. When we went in that day, I was on like the 4th or 5th row from the top of the bleachers, about halfway down. And about halfway through the movie, this guy got up and walked past us, and when he walked past us, he stabbed this other guy in the neck, and the guy fell down. Well, my friend that had been to prison a few times told me, when the lights come on, just stand up and follow me out, and don't look back, and act like you don't even know nothing. And I remember kind of glancing back, and I seen people just stepping over this guy like it was nothing.
Everybody was acting like there was nothing there.
Yeah.
And yet here's a person, and apparently he must be dead. He was killed in the middle of the movie. And yet, how was your feelings, your emotions at that moment? This is the first movie you've been to.
At that time, I was glad it wasn't me. And you just have to mind your own business.
And even though your emotions may have been at that moment to want to help when you seen that happen, or
you had to mind your own business.
So you have to just shut down all your own emotions, no matter what, for survival.
We used to have a saying, they can lock you up. I can't say the word. They can stick it to you. They can take everything away from you, but they can't eat you. And it's kind of a motto that you have to train yourself to live by. The outside world don't exist. Even if you get a letter or anything from the outside world, or a visit, you have to remember when that day's over, you go back to your cell and you live in that world, because it's a completely different world than out here.
Well, I know that going back to the, like what led up to you getting in prison, when you think about it, you'd shared with me before, a young boy asked you to go to church with him when you were little, and then, you were in the neighborhood, but then you ran away from home.
Yeah.
You ran away from home and got in trouble with the law for a variety of different reasons. And you'd mentioned you'd been in prison. How long total were you in prison?
Well, I did 12 years the first time. I did 3 terms. It was 6 years and 6 years, and then I did 11 years, 8 months.
And the crimes?
Was all drug related.
Drug related. When you have drugs, when you're taking drugs, you start out when you're little, like you said, sniffing glue. Yeah. There's kids out there, the parents may be watching On Call, and their kids may be involved with drugs. The purpose of On Call and the purpose of asking you to come to share your heart with people on call is not to glorify prison, but hopefully to get people's attention to the fact of the way life is in that other world.
They used to come through with a TV camera once a year or something like that, and they'd fix a cell up and show how the prisoners lived. They had a little TV in there, coffee pot and everything else. But they don't show, and that's how the cell looked, and it's all fine. But they don't show what goes on behind that.
Yeah, like don't snore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you don't have TVs in all your rooms with air conditioning and fluffy pillows and.
Well, if somebody sends you a TV, you got a TV, and they have air conditioning in the wintertime.
In the wintertime. Well, I guess it's better than no time, but I don't know. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, too, is the fact that what kind of rehab? You're sent to prison for rehabilitation, correct? What kind of rehab is there? Well,
I heard of it, but I never seen it. Most of the guys that were strung out or whatever, they put them in J-wing and called them J-cabs and kept them doped up where they could control them.
So they were on psychic medications. You know that with the antisocial behaviors, there's sometimes that the only way that you can deal with certain people is to keep them medicated, and the medical field acknowledges that. But what about those that are not on those type of drugs? Now there's the psych meds given by the doctors, psychiatrists there in the prison, but you'd mentioned before that you could get drugs there.
You can get anything you want in prison if you get the money.
How does that happen? I can't just mail you drugs in the mail.
Well,
not that I would, but I'm just saying that how does it get through?
There one time you could get drugs in the mail. A lot of drugs come through. You get a package every 3 months. We used to have our wives open the box of cereal and take the speed and turn it into liquid and soak the lid and then let it dry and then glue it back together.
Wow.
And when they check it, they don't check the box. They just check what's in it.
It's amazing the different ways that things can be done.
Family visits. A lot of guys would have their wives bring it in a family visit, and they would go to the hoop with it and bring it back to the yard.
Wow. Well, there was one other thing, talking about guards, the guards are supposed to check this stuff to make sure that you're not bringing in drugs and different things. And how does that work as far as relationships with the prisoners and relationships with the guards, from your point of view?
Well, every organization has got a twist to it. I mean, there. My experience with prison guards that I got to know as best you can know them, being on that side of the fence and having to work with them and stuff like that. I worked with a lot of good men. But there was a lot of them that was not only there to just collect their paycheck, but there was money to be made by turning your head, by not checking that box.
So just in any realm, there's good, bad, and good and bad.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to talk about also was the fact that you had, since you've gotten out, and I want to talk about how you got out. How are you here now? But one of the things you talked about was the fact that you went to visit a prison guard and stayed the night with him, and in that story, you were sharing with the fact that he opened up and started talking to you about something that happened to him. And so what I'd like to do is back up just a little bit before I go there, in the fact that prison guards, they don't have an out date. You had an out date. Once you got done with your time, you were out. But prison guards do not.
Yeah.
And so for those who are involved with people whose lives are at stake, and the guards are watching and making sure that we're safe and the prisoners are staying inside and not outside, and yet honoring them in the sense that there are those that who really do care and are wanting to be able to help. So each one of us on call, they're on call for their profession. We all have different jobs and different opportunities to help others. Now you have done a complete turnaround from being a guy who was in prison, did your time, and here you are out. Now, what is it, the passion of your life now? You're no longer wanting to ride motorcycles and be an outlaw. What are you doing?
Well, I got involved with a church and became a minister, and through the grace of God was some doors was open, and I was allowed to go to a boys' prison camp 2 years ago, Crystal Creek up here. Some people don't think of it as a prison camp, but they're in prison just like we were. It used to be an old fire camp for adults, but they turned it into a youth camp.
Now, a youth camp sounds like a nice place to go.
It's as nice as it can be, but their freedom's still taken away from them. They're still locked up. They still have to obey what they're told. It's kind of the same thing.
Are there a gladiator type of situation going on there also, in the sense of finding out who's going to be the toughest guy? And
sure, there's a lot of them kids that were up there came off the street, and they were already involved in street gangs. Because they had uncles that were in prison telling them how cool it was and everything. And one of the fortunate things I got to do while I was up there was I got involved with the gang counselor up there, and got to do some classes on prison gangs and street gangs and stuff with them. And in the 2 years that I had been going up there, we actually baptized 175 boys.
Their lives got turned around.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't understand the fact that if they're going in one direction, and they're becoming defiant, and they have a conduct disorder. In other words, they're going, they're being aggressive. I'll do what I want. You can't tell me what to do. And it starts out young, as it started with you. And now here you are trying to turn the tide for some of these kids, to spare them from the anguish of how many years were you in prison?
About close to 18 altogether.
And those are times that you cannot get back.
I watch my kids grow up in pictures.
That's a heartache, isn't it?
Yeah.
And not only missing out with your family, your children, but also the fact that you were exposed to a lot of emotional trauma. Even you had to shut down for that survival mode.
Yep, your freedom is gone. You have to forget anything you ever dreamed all your dreams, all your feelings, all your wants out here, the only way the outside, you could even get in touch with the outside world is if you watch the TV program, because it's all a fantasy. There was the reality. You had to wake up to the sound of the whistle every morning at a certain time every day. They cracked the door. You had to go out the door, get counted, go to chow. I mean, there's a routine that you have to go through all the time, and it becomes a way of life. That's why a lot of guys do so much time, and when they get out, even if they go to a program out here and stuff, they can't stay out because they don't know how to live here.
Wayne, I want to say thank you, and I know that you have a parting word that you would like to say to the kids that might be watching, or the adults that might be watching the show right now.
Well, first of all, I'd like to reach out to every young person out there that is listening to somebody tell them that drugs are cool, that being in trouble is always cool, going to prison is cool. It's a lie. Don't follow it. Don't go that way. If there's one thing in my life, if anything I've ever done mattered, take my past and not go there.
I hope you liked the show and that it ministered to you. Until next time, bye-bye. For additional information, contact me at valentinehartminder.com.